Lay. Sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Kane is in the building.
Yeah. Alright, already the show goes on all night. Till the morning we dream so long. Anybody ever wonder when they would see the sun? Just remember when you come up, the show goes on. Alright, already the show goes on all night. Till the morning we dream so long. Anybody ever wonder when they would see the sun? Just remember when you come up, the show goes on.
Have you ever had the feeling that you was being had? Don't that shit that make you mad? They treat you like a slave, put chains all on your soul and put whips up on your back. They be lying through they teeth, hope you slip up off your path. I don't switch up, I just laugh, put my kicks up on they desk, unaffected by they threats. Then get busy on they. See, that's how that shit.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Overseas Famous podcast. Today we're going to be talking, last week we talked scammers. Today we're talking gambling, and I love it because I think there's such a huge market for gambling. We're joined today by Billy Christy. We've known each other for a long time. We were just talking beforehand. Bill is pickcity.com. He's an agent. He is a person you want to go to if you're a betting man or woman. Sorry, we're trying to keep it, PC. Betting man or woman.
Michaela would let you know, brother.
Oh, and Michaela's not on. So Bill, our other Michaela works for us as well, and she hops on, and we say anything bad about women, she will let us know immediately. In fact, when she's editing this later, I'm sure I'll get a text. But Bill Christy, pickcity.com. So awesome stuff, and let's just talk kind of right off the bat about the gambling and how big of an industry it is. I know I have FanDuel on my phone, and I throw some picks out every once in a while. Pick some games. It makes it more fun. I feel like fantasy-wise, fantasy football, fantasy basketball, it makes it more fun. You're more engaged in a meaningless game on 10 o'clock West Coast game, Utah versus Houston on like a Thursday night in February. So I think it's awesome. So take us through kind of what you do for your organization.
Yeah, so you mentioned Pick City. I am one of the agents on Pick City, but I also run everything pretty much independently outside of them as well. That's where I started. And then they reached out and said, hey, can we get involved with you? Can you be one of our agents? That sort of stuff. And kind of the relationship has grown from that. They have a ton of guys, a really, really cool network of people that do the same thing that I do, essentially. And I like to tell people, the word in the industry is handicapper or capper. But I always feel like you mentioned scams. I always feel like cappers are followed by the word scam artists. There's plenty of people out there who, really are just throwing darts out there or telling you what they're betting as an average bettor. And just wanting to make some money off it. A majority of those guys, whatever they make from it, like they're just using that to pay their debt of their losses. So it's tough to navigate. It's a very interesting subculture. I would say 95% of it is all on Twitter. Another 5% is on Instagram. But essentially what I do is all the back end stuff that I think most bettors need in order to make the right decisions when they're going to place a bet. You had just said kind of like the average person, right? Like if I want to go out and watch a game that I'm not normally going to watch and make it interesting, I'm going to throw a few bucks on it. Absolutely. Totally understand that because there's so many different types of bettors. I deal with everybody, but I always try to make it as upfront as I can be with people that, listen, I'm not a lottery ticket for you. I'm not going to give you that crazy 10-team parlay that you're going to put $5 and win 10 grand on, like you see on FanDuel and DraftKings. I tell people all the time, there's a reason why they post those things.
Yeah.
It gets people excited. It seems easy, and it's not. There's so many losses that coincide with that one hit that there's a reason why Vegas is Vegas, and they're still building standards. They have an edge over, probably close to 90% of the bettors out there. But what I look to do is find edges in pretty much every sport. I do everything from, typical NFL, college football, I'm wearing a KBO hat right now that's Dinos, which became like huge because of the pandemic. That was like the only thing going on last year. But it crosses over the globe. You know, I have my site up right now it's awesome. It gives me all the data. If anybody's ever visited the site, where they're from within the world. Like I have people from Malaysia, Indonesia, Australia, Japan, China, India, Africa, Belarus, Ukraine. It's nuts. And the big ones I think are UFC stuff and soccer. Like those two.
Okay.
Whenever I have things posted on those, I mean, I get people from all over the globe that are interested in those sports. Not so much like the typical American ones, NFL and stuff like that. But look, I'm just going out there trying to find as much information as I can because people don't have time either, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
casual bettors, you know, you see a game that's going to be on TV and they'll bet it just to have interest in it. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But to think that you're always going to have an edge on a game that just happens to be on TV, it's just not the way to do it. I look at it personally as a sports investment consultant. That's what I call myself. You know, I tell people it's a stock market, but it's fun, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the stock market, granted, has been becoming fun because of Reddit and, you know, AMC and Dogecoin, all that kind of crazy stuff. But for the most part, like people our age, they really didn't know much about the stock market until they had to get invested in it. Where sports, everybody kind of watches it from a young age, and this is a way to make some money off of it. But you have to be smart, and you have to understand that it's a long-term process. You know, like my goal is always to win a certain amount per week that accrues to per month, that accrues to per year, you know, and there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, and you know, it's how you manage that stuff. So that's mainly what I'm trying to do with my service.
Well, it's crazy just talking about the international soccer, obviously huge. I know I've bet on soccer. I've bet on Premier League games in the past. UFC, I can't. I see, and this is where I think this is such a good example because I know nothing about UFC, but I would watch the fights and things like that, and to make it more interesting, hey, like let's throw some money down. I do find it when you said UFC, these fights become such a huge overseas market because everyone's watching, and such a global audience is watching that. They're watching soccer. You were talking, when the world was shut down and there's only a few leagues going and there's only a few sports going. Like you were saying, the Dinos, like big organizations like that, betting became such a big thing because the bettors, they don't want to stop. So when the world shuts down, how did you handle that when there was so little betting going on? And all of a sudden it's just like, what?
Yeah, it was an interesting time because that was when I was like full on into it. Like I was committed to it. I kind of like, you know, teetered with the idea and put some feelers out of, you know, can I make this a real legitimate business? And as soon as I went into it, it was like 2 months later, the pandemic hit. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me right now. You know, and my two main sports are college football and college basketball are huge for me. And college basketball, I mean, we all know, right? Like it's start of the conference tournaments and they're just like, all right, we're done. We're stopping. To be honest, the craziest thing I ever seen in this business was when that pandemic hit, people were gambling on simulations. So you'd have a guy at his house and he would set up Madden and he would set up lines and they would post it on a website, and literally people were betting on game simulation. The same thing with college basketball. Like there were so many guys that were creating the actual tournament, what they thought it would be, putting it out there and just letting a computer play, and people were gambling on that. Esports was huge during that time because that never stopped. And table tennis. People were betting on Russian table tennis like they were betting on an NFL game on a Sunday. It was crazy. Now look, that's not everybody, right? Like we said, like people don't just want to watch a game that are interested. Like, in my opinion, these were like serious, deep down, degenerate people that were like, I need to have action. You know, it's like really table tennis. And I set out from the get go when that started. I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do this because I don't know anything about table tennis.
Yeah.
To get information is so difficult that I'm like, I can't. And even KBO, I was super apprehensive of, but because it got so much notoriety and ESPN and all picked it up, and it was cool because I got two young kids, so I'd be up at like 4:30 in the morning when
Yep.
the games are like, right in the meat of the games. So you were able to pull some pretty quality information out of that. And there's also a lot of guys that play in that league that were former major league players or
Yeah.
guys that were, pretty big prospects back in the day. So you were able to gain some knowledge that way. But the guys that are betting on simulations where like there's nothing what are you going to do? Am I going to sit at home and run the simulation myself 100
I
times
was
and try to figure out like to me that's not what we're in the business for. So, but it was
yeah.
interesting to see these types of things that popped up just because people needed the action during the pandemic.
I do find it so interesting because like you said, there's always a service, there's always something where if someone doesn't want to do something, there's a service for it. And people who gamble a lot, they, like you said, they don't want to have to look up what is going on, what is the matchup, who's hurt, who's not. There's so many things because even I think about that. It's like, and Bill, obviously a tremendous basketball mind, and we've known each other for a while. I do think it's almost comparable to coaching in terms of you're scouting every single little thing. You have to go and scout, and as like a high school coach, you're constantly going out and you're scouting and saying, okay, what does this guy do? Is this guy playing? Who's this? What's this team going to do? What did they run? It's like you have to figure all these things out with 50 to 60 to 70, 80, 100 games every single night. That's a lot. And for gamblers who want that action, you are the service to go to.
Yeah, and it's tough because, like you said, there's just so many different avenues, right? Like there's so many different leagues, there's so many different teams. So like the first thing that I would try and do every single day is I want to just narrow that down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no reason to be like there's probably guys that want to bet on every game, but I'm not going to go out there and do all that legwork. I won't have enough time in a day to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to narrow it down for folks. And the guys that like use my service, I would guarantee you like 9 out of 10 of them, they don't take every single one of my picks. Then I guarantee you there's guys that go against it. And I always tell everybody, like, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm not telling you have to do exactly what I'm telling you to do. Like if you look at my spreadsheet over the course of time that has all of my plays and all of my numbers, sure, that's what I have to base all my marketing from. But I know for a fact that people don't do that. And that's okay. Because at the end of the day, you're making the decision. I don't have your money. You have your money. You're the one that's making the bet. So if you're making the decision, I'm just trying to give you as much information as I can, right? And this is the reason how I came to this play. That's why I like this play. If you don't like it, for whatever reason it may be, go ahead, go to the opposite way. And I would tell the person, best of luck to you, because at the end of the day, we tell people all the time, there's only one enemy in this industry, and that's the book. It's not other people doing the same business I'm doing in competition with. It's just trying to win money from Vegas, from the books. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. But yeah, you have to narrow down the amount of information you're going to take in because you will literally drive yourself insane. I actually got close to that with baseball prior to the start of the season. I had it set in my head. I was like, I'm going to figure out a way to bet only dogs, right? They're always plus money. There's got to be a way to take them to where I know I'm going to be making money, profit over the long term. And I don't know if either of you are familiar with SDQL, Sports Data Query Language.
No.
Insane. It's these people that have put together these databases where I can literally punch in Phillies at home off a 2-week road trip with Aaron Nola starting and it's 60 degrees and sunny that day. What have they done over the last 200 times that happened? And it'll spit out this data for you. And it's a huge advantage, I think. I'm a big believer in all kind of data that you can get, the better, the more you can get, the better. So like this was like where I was like, wow, maybe I can really find a way and dig deep into it. I think I spent like a whole week and I had all this stuff, information saved, and I'm like, nah, not over the long term. It's not going to work out. So like, you try and find these edges and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And you got to figure out what works best for you for me in my position. And then for you as a bettor, like what do you find the most success with? Because that's what it's about, being successful and winning money from the book. That's it.
Well, go ahead, John.
It's so interesting to me. Like you mentioned the stock market. I like to play the stock market. I consider it almost like a game the way I play it. You know, I do some research, like you said, with Reddit. But where do you draw the line with, like, as far as you're talking about doing all the research, you love the research. Do you ever get to the point though where you have a good feeling, like
Yeah.
Kevin mentioned coaching, right? Sometimes, like, it drives us crazy sometimes with professional sports where we're like, everyone's following the statistics, and sometimes you're like, shut the hell up and go with your gut because that's the way the game is going. Like, do you ever have to go that way, or do you ever speak about that? And also, when you get a chance, send us your website and stuff like that. We would love to put that in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. To answer your question, yes, absolutely. There will be times where, again, when I first start out, I look at everything, meaning I look at the games that are going to be played that day. I look what the lines are. And really the top data point that I look at to start with is I use Action Network. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. And I have a pro subscription. So, like, I get to see the percentage of money that's coming in on a game, the volume of it, as well as the ticket number. So I always tell everybody that should be the first thing you look at. If you see, for an example, let's say it's the Sixers playing the Heat, right? And the Sixers are 5-point favorites. And you see that there's 90% of the tickets, the amount of bets being placed, 90% of them are in on the Heat, right? You're going to think, okay, well, if there's that much volume on the Heat, that the Sixers line shouldn't be -5. It should go down to -4. It should go down to -3 because the Heat shouldn't be getting this many points if all the public's on it. But if you see the percentage of money being in the 60s, 70s, opposite of what you saw from tickets on the Heat being on the Sixers, and you see that line staying at 5 or moving up to 5.5, moving up to 6, you got to sit there and think, okay, the general public, which is that first percentage, the number of tickets is on that team. And I see the amount of money, which we call in the business smart money for the most part. You know, these are guys that are just placing one bet, but they're putting it in for 10 grand. That's making up that percentage of the money coming in. And Vegas isn't moving that line. Like, something doesn't make sense there. So that's like the first thing I do to kind of like square in on my data points. And if after that I go in and I start looking into deeper research and I'm like, it's not really adding up the way that I thought it would. If I have a really good feeling about it out of the gate, I'm going to just throw that data off to the side because you're right. At times you can't go by just strictly data. There's a very famous saying, right? Regression back to the mean. So you might have data points that say a team's 10-0, 10-0, 20-0, 21-2, and you're like, oh, I got to ride that, right? It's like, well, yeah, but eventually it's going to go back. Everything, you know, it's like a roulette table. You see black, 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 black. Oh, you run over there and hit black. Well, it's going to come red eventually.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't want to be on at that one time, you know, where it's going the other way. So you got to be careful with the data. But again, that's why I say, to me, the more you can get, the better off you'll be, because otherwise you kind of can be blinded by it. So to answer your question short term, yeah, I would go by gut from time to time. Not all the time, but yeah, absolutely from time to time.
Gotcha.
It's so wild to just like think about when we talk about the correlations and the analytics involved in betting and how much those analytics are starting to kind of creep into, well, not really creep, but, you know, take over sports with such analytical approaches. As a, you know, a betting man, as someone who's in this industry with using so much data and using so much analytics, how do you think that sports, is it a way that's going to be, is it the wave of the future, or is it just a passing fad?
It's a great question. I want to say it's going to be a wave of the future, but I really think down in my gut it's only going to be a passing fad because we know everything changes in terms of that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, right, like we're talking about sports. So you're talking about human beings playing a game.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you can have all the data you want, but at the end of the day, in baseball, you still need a guy to swing the bat and hit the ball, right? You know, he might be able to hit a curveball 90% of the time. Well, yeah, but who knows what's going on inside this guy's head that day, right? So when you're dealing with humans, I tell people all the time, like, yeah, I like to think I have an edge when I put a play out, but it's still called gambling. It's still human beings doing it. So there's still a chance. Look, a prime example just happened to our Sixers, unfortunately, right?
Mhm.
Like, there's so many people that probably had money on the Sixers, and Embiid goes down, totally changes the game.
Yep.
It's not the same game that you bet on pregame because now you have the star player, the best player in the league, arguably. He's down and out, and chances you win that bet are slim to none now. So
I totally agree. I mean, even thinking about that Sixers game and human error involved, and you have Embiid go down, but even like the foul trouble that Embiid or that Simmons gets into, and that plays a part too. Like, is that something that you almost research? Because I know when Simmons was in foul trouble, I know as a player, people are like, "Oh, why didn't he explode?" I'm like, "You're going in and out, in and out, in and out. You can't get in the flow of the game, and that's such a huge thing." So, does that something that you actually look at when you're looking through all your data? Are referees who's reffing the game, who's umpiring the game? Does that play a big part into how the money's gonna go?
for me personally, not too much, but I do know people that strictly like. I know guys that'll bet baseball strictly based upon who the umpires are
Hmm.
because they have all the data that says, when this umpire is doing a game, the total runs increase by a half a run, which doesn't seem like much, but when you're dealing with, a number usually between 7 and 9.5, that's a big number when it's a half of that. But for me personally, not too much. But you mentioned fouls. Like for me, big time, especially college basketball, if I'm going to be putting money on an underdog team, I look at two things in particular with underdog basketball teams in college basketball. That's how well they shoot free throws, also how well they get to the line, and the other piece of it is offensive rebounding. So for me, foul shooting is huge because if you're going to be a team that's going to keep it close in a close game, foul shots, we all know, right? Foul shots matter.
Hmm.
So if I'm betting on an underdog team who's only shooting maybe 60% from the line, I don't feel too comfortable unless the spread's like they're getting 20 some points. But if they're only getting 5 or 6, I want a team that's going to be able to knock down free throws late in the game, and vice versa. If you're betting a favorite, same thing applies, right? Because if teams are fouling you and you're missing free throws, say the spread's 4, and you have the favorite, you're -4, and you're up by 5, and then you get fouled, you miss the foul shot, the other team comes down, hits a meaningless shot that means nothing except for you, the better, and you lose. Like people think it's like not a big deal, but it's a huge deal when you're dealing with numbers that are that small. So yeah, it definitely plays a factor.
It's wild, and I think about just even terms of like how basketball is going, and how it goes in the United States. And you have a guy like Lillard the other night who just goes off. I mean, just three after three and hitting from half court almost, and just the things that almost like analytics are not going to show. It's just almost like you said, his mentality took over, and you're like, what's going to happen? Will he do that? Is it almost easier to bet more of like the European game, like Eurobasket, where things aren't as whoa, things could swing either way if this guy gets hot? Basketball overseas, it's more of a controlled game. It's not as up and down. It's not as flashy. There's not guys who are just going to go throwing shots in the ocean.
Mhm.
Is it almost an easier bet where you're going to kind of get the product that you're going to think you're going to get?
It's a good question. I think it's different for everybody. For me personally, I find it difficult when I'm betting on games that, again, I don't have as much information on.
Mhm.
And I know what you're saying, but then there's also that piece that, and I'm not going to play too much into it, but you hear it all the time when you're dealing with, leagues and stuff in Europe that some other people tend to have their hand in the game than actually the players. So,
Yeah.
the 3-letter word begins in F, ends in X comes up a lot. And I mean, whatever. I don't, at the end of the day, I'm not too big onto that. But I would say that it's important. Again, you mentioned how, I've been involved with basketball my whole life. And I feel like I have an advantage over it in the college sense. But I think, believe it or not, like I think at one point my highest percentage was in soccer for a while as far as winning plays. And I chalked it up to I just don't know that much about it. So I don't have that like bias. Like you just mentioned Dame Lillard, right? Like if I'm going into a game and I see the Trailblazers are playing, whoever, and I'm like, oh man, they got Dame though. Like he can drop 40 tonight. And I put that in my head. It's like, no, you got to take that away. Like, you almost want to say, I don't even want to know what the players' names are. I can deal with, just give me the numbers, right? Like, give me the player's number that he is. I don't need a name. I don't need a face with it. Because at the end of the day, you're really not betting on the players, right? Like, you're literally betting on the team. So the more you can extrapolate that out of your equation, I feel like is an advantage. So, you're overseas, you can kind of have an easier time doing that because most people don't know who those guys are that are playing over there. So, both sides of the coin. For me personally, not really, but I could totally see why it would be an advantage for some.
Well, you mentioned one of the biggest things overseas, which is you've no idea. There's so much corruption. Teams are run by criminal organizations, and there's just some shady stuff going on. And as just a kind of unwilling participant in a whole entire, mafia war that you end up in overseas, like you were saying, it makes it very hard to bet the game because you don't know what other factors are playing into that. Is that something when you are kind of, picking things that might, like you were saying, when your only game was in town was in Korea, was that something that was kind of playing in your mind? Like, I don't know what shady shit they're doing over there, but
yeah. Like if I sensed like, if I see a pattern starting to form that like, this doesn't make any sense, and look, at the end of the day, Twitter can be a really, really nasty world, but it can also be an awesome community depending on how you're using it. And it kind of gives credence to it with this scenario where you'll see guys posting about the same thing you're thinking. You're like, wait, how come this team who was top of the league the last 2 years, they didn't lose anybody, and they lost their first 3 games, and it's always them as a favorite, and they always seem to lose the second hit. Like, something's not adding up here. Yeah, I won't go out there and say, oh my God, it's definitely being fixed, but I'll say to myself, well, I'm not reading it right then. So I will back away from that particular team or that particular league. Quick example I can give you is China soccer. I loved Chinese soccer last year. It was phenomenal. It's at like 3 and 4 in the morning. So I used to always call it my wake and win. I'd give out the play at night, wake up the next morning, I'd see a win, be like, okay, we're up 2 or 3 units, whatever it may be to start the day. This is great. And they were hitting over. So many goals every single game. And the start of the season, like a bunch of games are like 1-0, 2-0. And I was like, I don't like this. And, and I typically don't like taking unders in soccer because it's so boring. So I was like, all right, I'm going to just go off of Chinese soccer for a while. And there's plenty of other leagues and sports to play, and I'll do that instead of just getting frustrated over that one sport.
Is there like I mean, I know, you're going through as a big time professional, almost betting people who are professionals. When you go through these different sites, are there sites that you use, or are you going directly to the sports bookie in Israel and all of these countries? Is it like is there confusion with currencies and how the money's being paid out, or is it all usually done through like a reputable site that's going to get you what you need in whatever currency you're using?
Yeah, nowadays you're lucky. Everything is pretty regulated. Like back in the day, you needed to use websites with like European names in them, and to get your money, it would be like a 2-month waiting period. You had to give your driver's license and your social security, like so much information. Now, FanDuel, you have DraftKings, you have Barstool Sports has one. There's so many different ways that you can bet depending on what state you're in. And majority of them have what you're looking for as far as any kind of sport there is. And I tell people all the time, you should have, if you're serious about it, you should have as many sports books as possible, because there's so much fluctuation in spreads and money. So, I might put a play out and say, Sixers minus 6.5 tonight. And somebody will be like, oh, well, on FanDuel, it's minus 7.5. Okay, well, I have FanDuel and I have DraftKings and I have Barstool and I have Fox Bet and I have Parx Casino and I have BetMGM. Like, you have so many of them, and you have to, because there's just so much variance in the numbers. And again, a half a point can make a huge difference. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of easy in a way, which is, I guess, kind of scary to some because it's so easy just to have it right on your phone. But to me, it's kind of like the beauty of it, that everybody can do it. whenever, wherever, depending on the field, unfortunately for now still. But
It is crazy just to think about the past of betting. And, you had bookies like coming to your house and stuff like that's what, there was no computers. There was no instant payout. It was like, I just lost 400 grand on this race or this fight or whatever. And it's like, all right, I'm leaving, like taking off and going and hiding out for a while. It's crazy how it's so instantaneous. I mean, for the gains and the losses, it's like you lose, immediately that
you got to put the money up front now, as
Yep.
opposed, like you said, when you just knew somebody who was taking action, you could be down a few $100s and kind of dip out on them if they needed to, and I know it happened. But now, everything up front. There's still those guys. Like, I still know guys, and I'm like, I can't imagine the people you deal with now, because at least back in the day, you had people that were like legitimate about it,
Yeah.
But all those guys now are using the apps, and
Yeah.
you still have those guys who don't have the money to bet, and that's the only way they can do it. So
That's crazy. That's wild. It's a scary world. I think the betting industry is such it's awesome. Like we were talking about earlier, it gives you such instant gratification. It makes every game interesting. I feel like, Bill, we need to, when we oversee, like when Barstool, if we ever get as big as Barstool in the overseas market, I mean, not as big as Barstool, but if we become the Barstool of the overseas market and we start a betting app, you're the first phone call making. Bill.
I'm in, 100%.
It's awesome. So shoot out your info for like the people listening on the podcast and not on, because we're going to blast all your stuff across the screen here, but for the people listening on the actual podcast in their cars and stuff.
So on Twitter, my handle is at Larry's, LARRYS Locks, LOCKS, the number 2. Just a weird name I came up with. You're a big wrestling guy. You got the DX shirt on now.
Oh yeah.
And when I was thinking of like a kind of like a pseudonym for myself on there, I had a luchador mask that was in my room, and I was like, oh, Lucha. All right. What kind of name was Lucha? Lucha Larry. All right, that sounds good. So that's what I was. Lucha Larry's Locks is what I came up with. At Larry's Locks 2 is my Twitter handle, and then my website is www.larryslocks.com. And I post occasional blogs, typically for UFC. I'll write up free plays for every single fight, every method of finish for them. I typically don't charge for those plays. It's just too tough in my opinion, UFC. But it's so fun at the same time. So I'll post them. And time to time, I'll write articles about upcoming sporting events, that type of stuff. And then that's also where I give out my VIP plays that I charge for. Everything's through my site. So find me on there. And also, you mentioned Pick City. I'm also an agent on Pick City. They're at Pick City. On Twitter, you can find them on there. And I'm also on their website. You got to search a little bit for me, but you'll be able to find me on there as well.
This has been super cool. First off, it's great to, talk to you face to face. I feel like we haven't seen each other in a few years, but it's awesome. We like saw each other every day for a long time.
Yeah. In my previous life, yes.
Yeah. Mine too. But this is super cool. I think like we were talking about before, it's such a big industry and it's only growing, and kind of how it's handled overseas, how it's handled here. I think a lot of people get a lot out of this show because I think it's a great thing. And Larry's Locks. We're going to be checking it out.
Absolutely. I'll give you guys some free stuff to put out to your guys as well.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Bill, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us and hopping on today. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon. Later. Awesome stuff, John.
Yeah, real interesting because I've played with now that it's so accessible. What was it, like 3 years ago it became legal in Jersey?
Yeah.
So accessible. A couple of people we work with in other areas, like, I have a couple friends that are up like quite a bit. I was going to ask you, like, how have you done in the grand scheme of things?
I'm not like a huge betting guy. The only bet I make is on myself. Sounds stupid, but it's the only bet that I'm like really willing to risk a lot of money on. But that's, I sit there and mess around. This NBA playoffs are like my favorite because I feel like because that's what I know the best. Like Bill was saying, I feel like that's where I'm in my comfort zone. I know what's kind of going. I kind of studied. I know the guys. I know who's going to go off. I know the home crowd. I kind of get that. So I know that the analytical part of it. So I bet the NBA a lot. But I'm not like a big, huge, like I think 20, $25 is like the most I've ever bet on a thing. And now I might have, I'll do like parlays and stuff. I'll bet like a $10 parlay to win, maybe 300, $400. Some have hit, some haven't. But I'll kind of go, it's like $5, $10 is mainly what I'm doing. I'll put a few of that action down on like the games at night. Sometimes, I'll hit, and then as you kind of go through, I'm always like, I feel like I'm even Steven. Like, it's just like, I'll go up big, and then it just eventually goes up, and then I'll go up big, and then sometimes again, and then it's back to even. It's just, I just never really get too high or too low.
This was like timely, because like I said, I over the last year or so, I've thought about doing it. I got into like stock trading, like on some of the apps and stuff now, and now you don't have to put a ton of money in. You can buy like $1 here and $1 there. And now I'm up like, to a lot bigger investments and stuff like that. But I could see myself kind of maybe doing something similar, like where you got to learn the market first, right? Where the lingo, what's going to happen, the ebbs and flows. But I feel like there were a lot of comparisons with sports. But like he said, like sports a little bit more fun to watch that happen rather than a graph go up and down or whatever.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like you said, it's just, anytime where it's like just the thrill and the excitement to have that going. And that's why I said, I like it because it makes all those games interesting. It's weird because I'm not really betting too much on the 10 o'clock games because I just fall asleep and I want to be in it. And it was crazy because sometimes I'll double down. The most I ever won, I won like almost 1,000 one time. And I did it because I won like 300 on one like group of bettings. And then I cashed out. Like FanDuel has this thing where you can cash out. So I cashed out, and I was looking, and it was like Milwaukee was playing someone last year, and I remember being like, Milwaukee was down by like 20 at the half, and I had the other team, and I was like, you know what, Milwaukee's going to come back. I was like, they couldn't have played worse, and like at the end of the half, Giannis started doing some stuff. I'm like, he's going to come alive. So I cashed out, and then I flipped it and bet the other side, and they ended up winning and coming back. And I was like, holy shit, like that, I just won like $1,000 because it was like such a big swing. So that was my most successful. I still think about that, but I'm not like that. I mean, if big time gamblers won $1,000 a day, they'd be like,
yeah,
like jumping out of buildings. Like, it's just, that was to me the most exciting. It only happened once, but I'm not also a big time gambler.
I went down to I'm not a big time gambler either. Like I said, I like to do the stocks and stuff because there's almost like guaranteed growth, like GDP or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
You know that you're gonna make some. But I went down to the casinos once, and you're having a good time with all your boys and stuff, and this is pre-kids or whatever. And I had brought money to gamble with, but we ended up just not gambling. But we walked through the casino. And a buddy of mine was just throwing $20 into slot machines, $20 a pull, right? And I was like, well, screw you, man. I can do that too. So I threw a $20 into the slot machine and it hit, and I won $500.
Damn.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my God, this is how it's addicting. I was a little tuned up. I was like walking through. I felt like $1 million, man. Like it was amazing feeling, like to literally walk out of that night, spend money on drinks, spending money on a hotel room, and still walk out with like $100. You're like, wow, I get why people do this, but that was like, I don't know, like that was just the luck was with me that night, to throw $20 in. I didn't even hit the buttons. I was just like, I was almost doing it to stick it to the other guy, and I ended up winning 500. So
it's crazy. It is, because I feel like that's the money that I would bet is like to have a good time. Like I want my betting money, the winnings, to be my having a good time night. Because like you said, like I go to AC, I just want to win enough to not have to pay for all of the shit that I just consumed and all the shit that I just did. I just want to like walk away and be like, no money done, but a great night had.
Last night.
Yeah. No profit, but I don't have to pay for anything, and I had a great time. So
exactly, you got to think about the people who go down there and they pay for the hotel room, they pay for the dinner, they pay for the drinks, and then they lose another like couple $100, man. Like it's an expensive night.
Yeah,
and not doing that shit anymore.
No. Well, maybe one time pretty soon. All right, so to be continued. That will be a fun live episode of
We should
on John's bachelor party.
I was gonna say, I believe Kevin's referring to a bachelor party we have coming up very soon.
Yeah, so John is due to get married later this summer, and we have our group of friends. We've been planning and trying to get some ideas and stuff. So we're gonna probably hit up. I don't think we're gonna be able to hit AC. We're not gonna do AC. I think we're doing Philly, but there are casinos in Philly, so maybe we'll make our way over there so we can, pay for the night.
We gotta bring Bill.
Oh yeah, Bill's coming with us. Bill, we could just sports bet all night. So that was awesome.
I have some information on the scammers episode.
Okay.
I'm not going to today, but we're going to tease it maybe for a future episode. So all you listeners out there who were into that scammers episode, interested about some of the stuff that Michaela and Kevin were talking about, might have some information in the upcoming episodes. So stay tuned for that.
Love it. Love the teaser. Yeah, we definitely have to talk more scamming. I think that was a lot of fun. People seemed interested. I had there was the first episode where 4 to 5 people wrote me and said, we're just like, yo, that episode was crazy. Like it was like my friends are texting me and stuff. And I've had like a few friends be like, oh, I like that episode. That person was cool here and there, but not all one episode where it's like 4 or 5 people were just like, boom, boom, boom. It was like one group text. That's why I said 4 or 5, because both of them were like, yo, what? But yeah, I had multiple people reach out and just be like, tell me more about what's going on. Like, that's crazy. What's happening now? So I like that teaser, because we'll definitely fill you in on the exciting details of that in the future show.
I like it. We'll do that.
Good times. Well, thank you guys for listening. We'd like to thank Bill Christy, Larry's Locks. We're going to put all the stuff on YouTube, but make sure you check him out. Twitter, check out his site. If you're a gambler, go out there, hit him up, and he'll give you some winners. I'd like to thank obviously John for hopping on producing today. I always say tonight, because I like to kind of say it quick, so it sounds like, although it's today, you can kind of be like, oh, was it tonight or today? Just leave the people in the dark.
We're all over the place. Sometimes we're filming at 11 o'clock at night. Sometimes we're filming at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So
exactly. Well, this was fun. Thank you guys so much for listening. Continue to subscribe on everything, YouTube, subscribe on iTunes. Keep checking out our website, overseasfamous.com. Blogs, new blogs every single week, coming at you with a lot of guys. We got Malik Ellison, who's going to be in training camps this summer, going to be on summer league teams. Aaron Maxey, who's still doing it at 42. He's going to be actually in the basketball tournament, which is fun. Jahevi's going to be in the basketball tournament. Like, these guys are all going to be. I think Malik is too. I think like all of them are going to be competing in the basketball tournament. Except me, obviously. So yeah, we got some good guests coming up. Guys who are going to be playing the Big 3 this summer. We have famous coaches, historic coaches from other countries. Joey Wright will be joining us, an Australian legend, and that will be fun. Thank you guys so much for listening. Continue listening. Continue subscribing, and we thanks so much to Bill. Thanks so much to John. Overseas Famous Podcast out.
That's why I pick and choose. I don't get you confused. I got a small circle. I'm not with different crews. We walk the same path, but got on different shoes. Live in the same building, but we got different views. I got a couple cars I never get to use. Don't like my women single. I like my chicks in twos. And these days, all the girls is down the road. I hit the strip club and all them bitches find a pole. Plus I've been sipping, so this shit is moving kinda slow. Just tell my girl to tell a friend that it's time to go. Now tell me how you love it. You know you're at the top and only heaven's right above it. We own. It's young money, motherfucker. If you ain't running with it, run from it, motherfucker. Alright, now somebody show some money in this bitch. And I got my bees with me like some honey in this bitch. You dig? I got my gun in my boot
first, and I don't buzz back because I shoot first. Meet me on the fresh train. Yes, I'm in the building. You just on the list of guest names. And all of my riders do not give a X games. Guns turn you boys into sex change. And I smoke till I got chest pains. And you niggas know I rep my gang like Jesse James. Women are possessive and they wanna possess Wayne. I've been fly so long I fell asleep on the plane. Skinny pants and some Vans. Call me Triple A, get my advance in advance. Amen. As the world spinning, dance in my hands.